meet you.
Todd.
Training went well last week.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I had some letters coming up.
Should I keep my mask on?
I don't, if we need to for now, until we open the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I mean,
I
okay,
do.
just until we open the meeting.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
I just do. I know. But I'm not risking myself. I'm going to.
Get your mask. If you don't have it, you don't have it. You'll be fine. Too many pockets, Jim.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're in charge.
Once you get settled, we'll get started.
Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. All right, it is 6:30. Good evening. It is Monday, October the 11th, and we are here for the monthly meeting of the Mayor and City Council. I'm glad to see so many of you out on a rather dismal evening. Thank you all for taking time to come to attend our meeting, and I'm sure we have quite a few people on the Zoom meeting as well. So we have a full agenda this evening, but before we get started, I invite you to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Please keep your seated. Normally, we have let people remove their masks during this hearing. However, due to the number of people in the room tonight, we're going to ask that you keep your masks on, except when you come to the podium to speak. Those of us at the table will remove our masks so you can be more clear, so we can be more clearly heard. So, thank you again for coming. Start off here with a little happy note. I think everybody will rejoice that the meter season will end on Thursday. And so, as of Thursday evening at 8 o'clock, our meter season will have officially ended for this year. Also, it's a pleasure for me to make note of a few things that have wonderful recognition that has been received for the Lewis and Bloom for their Children's Learning Garden, which is at the other end of Stango Park. That was recognized by America in Bloom, as well as the dog park for their efforts to work in both of those areas. Our Children's Learning Garden is quite a successful adventure. Also, they've begun to do their fall displays around town. I hope you'll appreciate those. In terms of Fort Miles, if you haven't had a chance yet to see the Oil Still Bleeds exhibit, which features a piece of the USS Arizona. It's worth the effort to go out and take a look at. It's a very moving display. And it also talks about the internment camps that were done here in Lewis or in the area in Sussex County, which not many people know about. So it's a very worthwhile visit. For many months, we've been talking about the swing bridge, and in fact, the contract to move the swing bridge began today. It is estimated that the swing bridge the whole contract will run 6 months, and they expect to actually do the move of the bridge sometime in mid-November. So that has begun. As many have discovered, obviously the restrooms here at the Rollins Center continue to create quite an obstacle course to get in here, but that's moving along. Because of the size of tonight's agenda, we have split this agenda into 2 items, into 2 days, and so we will be meeting again on Thursday to consider some items that were going to be on a much longer agenda. The agenda that is posted that you saw for tonight we will cover all those items, but there are additional items that will be covered Thursday evening in this room at 6:30. Reminder that the hazardous waste pickup, that's drug and electronics that you need to turn in or wish to dispose of, will be occurring on Saturday, October the 23rd, between 10 and 2 at the Schley Avenue Board of Public Works building. Also, the new flood insurance regulations are out under a formula known as Risk 2.0. If you have flood insurance, you will be getting a letter soon regarding the status of your flood insurance. You may have read the article in the News Journal saying that much of Delaware will see not a major increase in their flood insurance. Please be sure to check your flood insurance. And then one item we will defer tonight is item I2 relating to the source water protection overlay. We will be deferring action on that this evening. Those are all the announcements I have this evening. Do you have anything else you want to?
I guess just clarity, I2, we're moving to Thursday's
Thursday
agenda.
evening, right,
So,
yes.
okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any announcements?
I guess it's worth noting today is Indigenous Peoples Day.
Of course.
So we would like to note that that's a part of Lewis's history, so it's worth noting.
Thank you. Anything else from the table? Hearing none, we can move then on to proclamations and recognition. The proclamations are lengthy this month, and I would say that E1, we have suspended reading proclamations because they can take a considerable length of time. However, the proclamation E1 relating to Extra Mile Day is encouraging people to go the extra mile and recognizing people that do, recognizing those who do. And I would say that the vast majority of the residents of this community are always going the extra mile, and I thank everyone in this community for their efforts to make this a better community. It really does make a difference in the way the community functions. We could not do what we do without our volunteers. There's also other proclamations here which I think are self-explanatory. And then I would move then to item E6, which is the appointment to fill the term of Rodney Robinson and Mardi Thompson for the Parks and Rec Commission. I've spoken with both of these long-serving members of our Parks and Rec Commission, and they are willing to continue to serve for another 3-year term. And I would entertain a motion to approve their reappointment.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving then on to item E7, appointment of a person to fill the expired terms of the Denise, Emery, Richard Grier-Reynolds, and the unexpired term of Brook Hedge for the Board of Adjustment. I have spoken with Denise Emery and Richard Grier-Reynolds, and they are both willing to serve for another 3-year term on our Board of Adjustment. And as we all are aware, Brook Hedge has stepped down from the Board of Adjustment, and I would ask council's approval of Luke Mehta, who is a lawyer who lives here in Lewis, a longstanding serving attorney in the city, or in the state, well recognized up and down the state, to fill Brook's unexpired term.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and several seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And moving on to the consent agenda, we have the minutes from the Mayor and City Council meeting from September 13th, the Board of Public Works meeting minutes from their special meeting and their board meeting. The special meeting was in January of 21. The board meeting minutes were from June 30th of 21. The financial activity reports, the police activity reports, and the fire activity reports. Are there any of these items that anyone would like to hold out for discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I would make just a couple of comments. I note on our financial activity reports that our meter revenue is up considerably this year, and we thank everyone for that. I believe we're at about 125, 130% of revenue.
Yes, about 200,000.
Okay, and so we have done very well with that, and we still have 14 days to go. So, and then I would also note that our fire activity reports are up significantly as well. I notice Gordon Davis is here in the room. Gordon, do you want to comment on that?
As usual, our volume
Come to the mic, please.
But you might want to bring it down.
Just pull it down, yep.
Yeah.
You're not that tall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, so the fire department, of course, we're on an increase again. We're almost 1,000 EMS calls above this same point last year, and approximately 100 fire alarms ahead of this point last year. So again, no slowdown in our business.
Yeah. I was reading your EMS calls for this month, for last month alone, were up by 94 over the same month in 2020. And your fire responses were up by 16. So obviously, our fire department is a volunteer fire department. They do a great job, and I know you had a big fire out at the Five Points a couple weekends ago, and that was probably quite a challenge to get there, and given it was a third-floor fire in a middle building.
Yes, sir.
So we appreciate all you do. I remind the audience that they are a volunteer basis. Please remember them when you make your donations at the conclusion of this year. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for the recognition.
Okay.
May I ask a question, please? Mr. Davis,
Yes, sir.
I would be very interested in understanding what your response time is for the different services that you provide. We get your monthly report. Would it be possible for you to include that metric in the report?
We could certainly look into it. It is a statistic we should have, so it would just be a matter of, pulling the data.
I would appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's definitely, we'll work on it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Gordon. With those comments about the consent agenda, if there are no further comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving then on to item G1, City Manager's Report. Emery?
Okay, I'm gonna try to run the PowerPoint from here. Okay. I want to thank Melody again for doing the report. I don't know, maybe I'm too far from the Bluetooth, so I might need to have you advance it. Okay, so Mayor Becker mentioned the capital project that you have to walk through to get to our meeting room, but the restroom construction is moving forward according to schedule. We're still planning on it being complete in December. Ship Carpenter Square repaving is underway, so the milling has been done and they've worked on some of the curb replacement. So that, I think we expect to pave that road next week, and then we'll be moving on to the crosswalks at Cedar and Savannah. Go to the next slide. Planning and land use, it was a very busy month. Planning Commission held a special meeting on September 1st to act on the preliminary consent of Fisher's Cove. The application was rejected by the Planning Commission, and the next step for that is to go to Mayor and City Council. That is scheduled for October 14th, this Thursday, in this room. And Council has the option of either upholding the action of the Planning Commission or granting preliminary consent. They also held their regular meeting on September 15th, and they reviewed, the second time actually, the lands of Thomas Minor Subdivision. They deferred it until October. There were some questions that they wanted some more information on, so they will take that back up at their October 20th meeting. The Executive Committee on Resiliency has continued to meet every second and fourth Tuesday. They had a presentation about floodplain management and the National Flood Insurance Program, and then a debriefing on the prior presentations. Mayor and City Council held a workshop on the comprehensive plan and talked about what we need to do for our comprehensive plan review, our 5-year review, which is coming up. And they also held a public hearing on Old Town at White's Pond, which was approved at last month's meeting. The subdivision code subcommittee of the Planning Commission met twice in September, and they are continuing to work on writing revisions to the subdivision code. The Joint Site Development Review Committee met twice. They reviewed Fancy Pants Holdings and Lewis Brewing Company. Mayor and City Council held public hearings on those two applications on October 5th, and they are on this evening's agenda. The H Park Historic Preservation Architectural Review Commission reviewed a draft ordinance regarding fence heights, and that is coming to council tonight. Council held their public hearing last week. And there was also an ordinance introduced regarding some zoning administration items, and it also included some things on building height and a number of corrections to the zoning ordinance. That was introduced on September 16th. A public hearing is scheduled for October 26th, but that will also be taken up tonight for a possible amendment. It was a busy month in terms of building permits. We issued a total of 86 building permits during the month of September. Normally, we're in the 50s and 60s, so that's a lot. There were a number of permits issued for things, improvements at Lewis Harbor condominiums, and each unit had the permits, so that might have accounted for kind of that increase in number. This is our trash and recycling and various refuse. We're down a little from the same month last year, but volume's still there. And 90 bonfires again in September, thank you. I don't even know what day it is. So again, the bonfires and the recreational permits continue to be very heavy. And we issued 10 new business licenses and 10 new rental licenses during the month. We are now, as of September 13th, requiring that staff either be vaccinated or test weekly, so that's been going on for about a month. The Board of Health met at the end of September, and based on that, we are moving forward with trick or treat. And we continue to, as you can see, space out and wear masks and try to be as safe as possible. And all of our meetings are also held virtually. So we have 2 personnel changes. Janine Heffley, our city clerk, left at the end of September. And then also on September 16th, Tyler Minoche graduated from the Delaware State Police Academy, and he is now in his field training. The Lewis Waterfront Preserve, we held a pre-construction meeting, so we anticipate that construction will start on that project. We had last month our bi-monthly meeting with Chesapeake. Every other month we meet to talk about expansion of natural gas, but I think it's not quite going as quickly as we'd hope. The renaming of Lewis Beach 1 and Beach 2 was considered by the Parks and Recreation Commission and the African American Heritage Commission. That is on this evening's agenda. We had our DFIT stewardship meeting. That is our workers' comp and general liability insurance. Mayor Becker is the chair of the Board of Trustees. The mayor mentioned the swing bridge. We had a pre-construction meeting with DelDOT on the swing bridge move, which I guess that was last week, and as the mayor said, the project is getting underway now. We did meet with our yard waste contractor because they have started to miss more addresses, and we're getting more calls that yard waste is missed. So they were responsive to that, and we have a strategy going forward, and I guess time will tell. Austin, Kalaman, Charlie O'Donnell, and I met with the drainage program about the Highland Acres tax ditch, and I think we're going to work on better coordinating with them in that area. Our Edmunds is the accounting system we use, but it's more than just accounting. It has all of our building permits. It's kind of like the I don't know, what would you call it? The brains of where most of our data is kept. And we just migrated to cloud hosting for that. And our staff just went through training for a work order system. And once that is up and running, we will be able to have residents be able to submit you know, if there's a pothole on your street or things like that, you'll be able to submit it directly through the software. So we're gearing up for that to roll out early next year. And we participated in all kinds of professional development. We'll leave it there. Is that the last one? Yep.
That's it.
So it was a busy month. I think we're into another busy month, so.
I think we are. I would just note that, thank you, Emery, wonderful report. The Executive Committee on Resiliency meetings are all open to the public, and they are the second and fourth Tuesday, as you mentioned, so the committee will be meeting next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. It is a virtual or a Zoom meeting, or you can come in person to City Hall. There's been some very interesting presentations by DENREC and the IPA staff and other professionals. And the next meeting, which is next Tuesday, Janelle Cornwell will be making a presentation. So if you are interested in following that, please plan to attend next Tuesday. Other than that, are there comments regarding Emery Sport?
I have a question.
Okay.
The question is related to the statement that there were 10 new rental licenses that were granted. Those, I assume, were those for residential rentals?
Yes.
And were those folks identified through the host compliant, or how do they?
Some of them were, not all of them. I mean, some people just
just
when they,
volunteer.
right. But yes, a number of them were. I'd have to look and check.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That might be interesting information since we're using that. And just for those of you who are not familiar with host compliance, it's a monitoring company that we're using to identify folks who are doing short-term rentals. Our short-term rental gross rental receipts tax is on an honor system. And while I would say the vast majority of the people are very honest about reporting, we have found some people that have not managed to get a license. And so this organization is helping to identify this. It's a national-based organization. There are no further comments regarding Emery Sport. I think we can accept that by common consensus. Thank you very much, Emery. Then we can move on to item H1, which is discussion and possible action on an ordinance to amend Article 16, modifications to the Residential Code of Chapter 70, Building Code of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewis, Delaware, by eliminating the entirety of Section 70-53, amendment to Section R313. This section excludes the requirement that new residents include fire suppression. We have had discussion at City Council, and we've had other input from this. We've had considerable input from Paul Eichler and others who are in the state level. We are aware that this requirement is in place in Newark and has been in place in Newark for approximately 18 years and has been functioning well up there. Khalil and I had a good conversation with the mayor up there regarding their concerns and what they have found in terms of compliance and what issues they've identified. And I think it's an issue certainly with the fire we had a couple of weeks ago, not within our jurisdiction, but just on our fringe. There's a reminder that fire is a present danger that needs to be monitored, and this is one mechanism that might not only save lives, but prevent and reduce some property damage. At this point, I would open it up. Cleo, I think you wanted to make some comments.
Sure, absolutely,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, fire suppression came to our attention earlier this year. Paul Eichler, who is the chairman of the Delaware Fire Sprinkler Association and also a longtime firefighter, chairs the organization, has been very, very passionate about fire suppression systems and the need to have them mandated for single-family homes. Currently, and I think many of us support this already, currently they are required for apartments, condos, and in many jurisdictions, townhouses as well. After meeting with Paul, and we've also had a lot of conversations with the Builders and Remodelers Association of Delaware, former Delaware Home Builders Association, and I see Jeff Burton and Randy Burton here as well, and we've had conversations with them, Mark Rainey, Justin O'Lear, who's the president, and their counsel, Kim Wilson. And it's been very enlightening, certainly for me, to learn about fire sprinklers and their operations and how it works, and the potential to save lives as well as property. I fully support having the current situation where we have sprinklers, obviously, in apartments, condos, and even townhouses, as far as I'm concerned. However, I was a little concerned and have raised questions about an actual mandate for private homes onto to those homeowners. These systems are not cheap, and because to me it became more of an unfunded mandate on private homeowners, I tried to find a way to find an alternative that would educate better the homeowners before they build their homes, so they can understand all the various benefits and costs associated with a fire suppression system. My feeling was that if homeowners were better informed and educated about them, it would be better that they make that decision whether they want to pursue a fire sprinkler system as opposed to it being an actual mandate. The result of conversations I had, and many conversations with Justin O'Lear, Kim Wilson, as well as Mark Rainey, and Mark Rainey has testified here before on this issue during our public hearing, was to, instead of having a mandated sprinkler mandate, when homeowners are purchasing their home and negotiating with their builder, that there would be a 2 to 3 minute video produced by not only the builders, but also in conjunction with Paul Eichler and the Fire Sprinkler Association, as well as city staff here. The idea would be that they would see very firsthand through a video what the fire suppression system does, what its benefits are, as well as its costs. And so to that end, I felt, and I continue to feel, that is a very good alternative, in that one of the allegations was that fire suppression systems weren't very well known to the homeowners, that somehow builders were allegedly bearing the information and they weren't getting that information. They were more focused on their granite countertops and other things like that. So this compromise, this alternative, would definitely bring this to light. And so, again, this was done in conjunction with the home builders, and I think it's a very, very reasonable compromise, so to speak. And to that end, I'm happy to talk about it further, or I make a motion.
Okay. I think we are ready. We just can continue to talk. I think, Carolyn, did you want to make some comments?
Yeah, I certainly did. Thanks, Khalil. I have a different opinion of that on my own. It has to do with the fact that as a child I was in a fire. And you can use a smoke detector, but as given to us some advice by one of the firemen who spoke earlier, that the time it takes for that versus the time of a sprinkler is much different. And if he had his druthers, he would prefer that we had a sprinkler system. My personal experience is that when I was in the house, I was a young child, but I still remember this over yesterday, that when there was a fire, it happened so fast, I ran and hid under something. And it was only because my father recognized that I was not there, that he went back and grabbed me, went to the window, it was the first floor, thank goodness, and threw me out to one of my family members. My father was hurt, but the bottom line is that the fire happened so fast that I am so sure that had we had a fire suppression system, the water would have at least given us some time to get out of the house. So I'm completely all for getting it and making it a mandate.
Would you care to make any comments, Andrew?
Well, I mean, I appreciate what Khalil is saying, in the sense of you don't ever want to feel like you're mandating something. In this case, however, it's been part of the code, the building code, for some time now, and the city has actually taken the action to exclude it from the code. And I think the other thing that weighs on me is that as the county develops and Lewis continues to develop, and we rely on a volunteer fire team, that many of them are coming from outside the city, and it's more congested for them to get to fire, so therefore it's becoming more and more dangerous for our residents from that perspective. So that's along with, you talk about government mandating things. One could make the similar argument about seatbelts. As cars had materials advance and cars in some ways become faster but yet less safe, you thus have the need for airbags, and you have the need for safety restraint systems. And in some ways I see that as true for our the need for fire suppression. Materials that we use nowadays, they may be thinner, combust quicker, those types of things.
Thank you. Tim, did you care to comment?
I don't really have much to add. I think my peers here have done a very nice job explaining the necessity and the value that would be derived by including this in our building code. So I have nothing else to add.
Okay, great. I would note that we did add this as a requirement to the Lewis Waterfront Preserve for the townhouse development there.
Right.
I would, and there is concern about, how much are people informed about fire suppression systems and what do they know about it? We've heard a variety of comments and we've received correspondence on it. But for me, this only would apply to new construction.
Mm-hmm.
It would not apply at this time to any kind of retrofitting or any renovation that's going on. I would point out that the Newark code does require, when a home is improved by 50% of the value of the structure, they have a requirement to add fire suppression system to those homes as well as all new construction, whether it's townhouses or freestanding homes. So their code would even be beyond what we're considering here tonight. We could talk about that at some future date, but I think what we're considering is the possibility of requiring it both for townhouses and for single-family homes. So,
I would make the point that the current mandate for apartments and condominiums and potentially townhouses is in my mind different from a single-family home. These are all structures that are next to each other, that one occupant of a apartment or condo doesn't want to be held to the standard of a negligent neighbor who could start a fire and it can immediately spread to their home. So I understand from that perspective where it's a collective issue where you're all in this together, so to speak. But again, I do think a single-family home is a different model, is much different from that. And I think if family and buyers and others are well-educated, which this video would do, I believe, they can make an informed choice. I was going to make a motion, and I still may make a motion to vote on this, but I mean, I think we've already had some discussion here. Nonetheless, I think I want to make a motion, and my motion simply would be that in lieu of mandating fire suppression systems for single-family homes and new construction, that we adopt an alternative that would require home builders to produce and to show a 2 to 3 minute video to all new home buyers, educating them about fire suppression system and their costs and their benefits as well.
and what about, that would only be for freestanding, for freestanding?
I said, yeah, for single-family
But
homes.
you would leave it for townhouses?
Well, for this purposes,
Before
now,
we discuss it,
I don't want to mix up townhouses with this, because isn't that a different?
No?
Well,
As it would need to be totally redrafted. It can't be
Right.
simply amended. We would need to bring back something for townhouses if we're going to do it just for townhouses.
Right.
Because right now,
It's everything.
in the IRC, it does not differentiate.
Right.
So we would have to then go back and look at how we would draft the exception language.
Okay, well then we can do that at that time then.
Okay. So
But-
wait, Khalil, did you get the motion? Okay, would you restate your motion?
Sure. The motion would be to require home builders to show buyers of new construction, single-family homes in Lewis, a video that would outline the benefits and costs associated with a fire suppression system.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I have a question. I would second, because normally that's just to get the conversation going, but in this case, we second, then we have to, if we essentially vote down Khalil's, then we have to have a new motion?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
I'll second your
No,
motion.
I appreciate that, Andrew. And I mean, I do acknowledge too, we've already had a bit of a conversation. We
Sure.
probably should have offered that earlier.
No worries.
And to have that. And, you know, I also, I really have to say, I don't know, I know we usually have people, I can't tell if Kim Wilson from the Home Builders.
Melody, can you take a look and
is
see if
on.
Kim Wilson's on?
You've already held a
We-
public
there's
hearing
a
on
public
this. I
hearing.
don't know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She may be on, but she can't, we're not going to take comment.
Right.
So I will say this, and first of all, I will say in closing that Paul Eichler was a fabulous advocate for the fire suppression folks. I mean, he's a really, really committed guy who cares a lot about fire prevention, firefighting, and has been in that business for, I mean, he's been a firefighter for over 30 years. So, you know, and he couldn't have been a better advocate in terms of his honesty, integrity, and information he provided. Similarly, the home builders, in coming up with this alternative, I was very, very surprised that they were willing to go, frankly, this far in actually producing a video that home buyers would be required to see. I was actually hoping that they would consider just moving the fire suppression option farther up in their options that they offer home buyers, somewhere where it was clear. But I have to compliment Kim and all the home builders here who really, you know, many would think that they're trying to hide from a mandate and are fighting it because it's going to add costs. Well, I mean, the fact is, you know, and Randy and Jeff could speak to this. I mean, suppression systems they're marked up like every other option are, so they're going to make money on those too. But you know, but they wanted to be as cooperative as they possibly could, and I think sometimes it's unusual when you find two sides who are willing to be as open and flexible as both of these sides have been. So I compliment both the home builders as well as Paul Eichler and his folks.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate all the information that we received, and certainly the compromise is an interesting one. I do have concerns about how it would be enforced. And so, I mean, how would we have any assurance that anyone had actually seen the video? And that would be something that then our building officials would have to go back in and check and have a sign off or something like that, rather than just relying on the public. So if there's no further discussion here at the
Well,
table.
we have a mandate to look after the health and safety of the community.
Okay, so we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Aye.
No?
Okay. So the motion dies. So is there another motion regarding fire suppression system?
Make a motion to approve Article
Okay.
16 for the modifications in residential code.
Okay. Is there a second to
I'll
Carolyn's motion?
second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve this.
Can I just note one thing? It would go into effect immediately, so to the extent, I want to
Once
be sure
it's
everybody's
signed.
aware
Yeah.
that it's okay.
Okay.
And I'll have a question on that.
Okay.
Before.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do you want to ask your question now?
So my question is, the ordinance as drafted says takes effect upon adoption. Is that for any permit application made after today? Or if there's something in the queue that hasn't been issued?
I would say any permit requested after today, any
Okay,
permits that are in.
that's what I would have
under
thought,
the-
but okay.
If it
so
hasn't been submitted.
Any application submitted after
After
today?
today.
Okay.
Or after, yeah.
May I speak to that, though? To the extent that the folks who are applicants were in queue, and in effect grandfathered under the old practices, if it is possible at all to share with them what information we have about the the value that is derived from a fire suppression system, I would appreciate
Okay.
that kind of information being shared so that they might make the informed decision that Khalil has spoken so eloquently about, and that they too might become part of this program and enjoy the benefits. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You got that, Galen? Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. I think it's an important topic. I think we're looking at health and safety issues here. I understand there is an expense element, but I also do think that the benefits in terms of health and safety outweigh the costs. We've had it was a very interesting conversation that Khalil and I had with Mayor Clifton from Newark. Again, I think I had concerns about the cost, and he assured me that they've had virtually no pushback in Newark in his tenure there as either a council member or as the mayor. So I think that this is not an unreasonable ask. Thank you very much. Then moving on to item H2 is discussion possible action regarding an ordinance to amend Article 5, Dimensional Regulations, and Article 6, Historic Preservation Architectural Review Commission of Chapter 197, Zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewis, Delaware by amending Section 197-54, Fences, Walls, Hedges, Shrubbery, and Section 197-58, Historic District Properties Review, and Section 197-59, Historic District or Property Criteria Standards. This item came to light as a result of an application to replace an existing fence in the historic district, which exceeded what the H-Park regulations allowed of 3 feet. The person involved in this was looking to replace a long-standing existing wooden fence that was 41 inches high, and what we found was in the H-Park regulations when they were adopted, they restricted height of fences in the district to 36 inches. And so I think in an effort to take a look at what really exists, we did take a look at fences around the community in the historic district, and they vary in height from 3 feet to up to 49 inches or 48 inches. And I think all of us would agree that fences around the town in varying heights and designs add to the character of the neighborhood. And so this was an effort to address that, what we think was an oversight when the H-Park regulations were developed. Janelle, what else would you like to add?
This also changes the fence height for the front yard, in the required front yard, from 3 feet to 4 feet. However, that portion of that fence has to be open, so you can actually see through it. And again, allows H-Park to provide discretion in the historic district. I would note, we left out a word on line 95. So the line 90. Does it change the intent? It does not. I just want for clarification that technically it should state, its standards include the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of. So we just left out the word standards in the title. So I wanted to make sure we got that on if you so choose to move forward with this ordinance.
Great. All right, we did have a public hearing on this, and are there comments from the table? So we will not be taking public comment this evening.
I mean, honestly, I'm not sure what we're doing here with this one. I mean, the couple of examples we were showed were over 4 feet. People can still go before H-Park and ask for variances, so I'm not sure what we're accomplishing by adding 12 inches to the maximum, quite honestly.
I also forgot, during the public hearing, a request was made if we could determine how we measure the fence height. Unfortunately, it cannot be done with this ordinance. Staff is working on finding the correct path to get that into the city's code, so we will be coming back with an amendment for that. Because it doesn't fall into any of the code sections proposed for this. We believe it actually would fall in probably in a definition section. So that has not been advertised nor a public hearing held, so we cannot adopt that and make that amendment with tonight's ordinance.
But I think as we heard at the public hearing, it needs to be clarified.
Yes,
And
we are
this is to
working
give
on that.
H-Park discretion in the height.
And the building officials.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And there was also in the description, it mentioned a requirement to be opaque, but in the ordinance it does not.
That they should not be opaque. There was the word "not" left off. I apologize for that. The intent is that they should be opaque. They should not be opaque, sorry. They should be open. The fences within the required front yard
That's right.
should be open, so you can see through them.
Okay.
You know, it's bothersome to me that it seems to me we need to sync up the matter of where the measurement is taken. That was raised during the hearing.
Right.
And it seems to me that it would be helpful for us to make sure that that's part of this. It worries me that we might be we would be approving an ordinance that in fact is ineffective because we don't have the understanding, the guideline, the established statement that the measurement will be taken from X or Y.
I think one thing we could do is put a policy in place until we can get the ordinance to come back, because we cannot, unfortunately, it does not fall into the sections of code that have been identified in this ordinance. So we cannot add that to this
understand what you
ordinance.
said.
But I think what we can do is put a policy in place until we can get the ordinance back in front of council for your consideration.
What section will that piece that is missing from here, what section of our code will that be
We're looking at the definition section, actually creating a definition for that, and how we calculate the measurement, and the measurement from height and the measurement for a fence at grade. So we were looking at that for a definition is what we were looking at. If there are other ways, we're going to definitely try to find the simplest way to make sure it's in code, and then maybe, reference back to this section of
Right.
code for that definition. So that's what we, on a couple of brief conversations have started looking at based on us looking at this
Right.
and unfortunately not being able to fix it with tonight's ordinance.
I know that there was one applicant one property owner who spoke during the hearing as someone had.
Mr. Vincent.
Larry
Yes,
Vincent.
Right.
Mr. Vincent, who spoke about his experience about not being able to do his fence job because of this. Do we have other members of the community who are similarly being held up by?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so no one else.
Just the
Okay.
one gentleman.
I think that
I'm sorry.
Just the one gentleman.
where the height is taken from would not be unlike where the height of the building is determined based upon measuring from the street, the crown of the street, correct?
I believe Robin as the one who mentioned how they were working on that. So he and I have had a couple of just, again, brief discussions because we had to look into this and the hearing was last week. So we've looked at that and we were going to look at like a potential definition change and see what made the best sense, because sometimes you measure it from the sidewalk, sometimes you measure it from the grade of the road. So we wanted to make sure it was clear and fair to everybody, because sometimes you have,
Right.
the retaining wall and then the fence, so.
Exactly.
we
And so
wanted to
that
make sure-
change will come back to us, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is merely to allow a height of a fence to be 48 inches. Where it's measured from will be determined. with the
Correct.
future change.
And this does not address material, correct?
No, this was
Right.
never proposed to address material. This is just to address
Height.
fence height, that it has to be open, the fence
Right.
has to be open within the required front yard, and then it provides discretion for fences within the historic district to then exceed the 4 foot, as long as they comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of the rest of the name of the guidelines.
Are there any
Long
other
name.
questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
No, okay.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Let's make a motion to approve Amendment Article 5. Do I have to read it all?
No,
Thank you.
I think you're okay, as presented.
As presented, thank you.
And would that be with the clarification of adding the word to line 95,
Correct.
please?
Correct.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Actually, that, yes.
thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. This carries 4-4 with 1 abstention, okay? Thank you. Then moving on to item H3 is presentation and discussion on possible action regarding the site plan for for the Lewis Brewing Company, SP 2-21, with associated site improvements to be located on Savannah Road, Sussex County, or excuse me, General Commercial, Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.15-39.01. The Sussex County Brewing Company has been before us several times. This has been a very complicated application because this was land that we had to first annex, then had to have an extension of sewer line to the property, and then, of course, then we had to go through a change of zoning for it. And so there's been a considerable length of time. I think I commend the presenters or the owners for their work with the city and the board to develop a plan that will provide the necessary utilities and a creative use of this entrance to the city. Is there discussion from the table? We have had a public hearing, so we will not be taking additional public comment this evening. Is there comment from the table?
I'll make a comment. I think this has been an interesting process with the Joint Site Review Committee and the issues that, and then coordinating with the BPW. The thing impressed me with the Joneses is that not their emotional investment that they seem to have in this project. So I really appreciate that. They seemed really excited about it and invested into the town as you can tell by the name of their brewery. So I know there would be some concerns, about parking that were raised, and again, they were proactive in going out and seeking an agreement with their neighboring business there to work on, and hopefully they're working towards some type of license agreement. But at this point, I think they at least have a letter of agreement to utilize it. So I'd say at every turn they've been sort of amenable to the challenges and working towards solutions as they come up. So,
I would add what Andrew is saying. I mean, this is an exciting project on a lot of levels, as far as I'm concerned. It's, Lewis doesn't have. We have Big Oyster Brewing, and the fact that this is a new business located on the bike trail really presents a lot of opportunity. And I think, if anyone has visited a lot of smaller breweries around Delaware and the country, they've become really interesting gathering places. They're very similar to coffee shops in their culture in terms of gathering, conversation, and they really add a lot to a community's culture. And so I've been very interested in this project from the beginning. I would add what Andrew mentioned about their Dick Bryan, who owns the property next door, was gracious enough to offer his parking lot after what he called after hours to the Lewis Brewing folks. I would suggest, and I think we've all talked about this, that they should probably consider formalizing that in some sort of license agreement. What does after hours mean, for example? Is that after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? And the last thing I'll mention is in terms of some of the recommendations here and conditions, sometimes I get a little concerned about some of these that tend to be, in my view, micromanaging, nitpicky. And the one here that the applicants have objected to, or at least asked to be removed or altered, is number 6, and I'll read that, is trash and recycling receptacles shall be installed near the connection to the trail. I'm not sure exactly what all that means. Near to the trail could be 5 feet, 6 feet. Is that a receptacle that is a larger receptacle? Is it a smaller? What kind of size would that be? And look, I think Mr. and Mrs. Jones and their team are going to have trash cans all throughout outside the area there, because there's going to be an outdoor area there. So it's something that was requested. It was by the applicant that it be amended or removed. And I don't know if this is an opportunity to make a motion that it be removed at this time.
I think they were mainly concerned that it didn't become a trash problem, and people going on the trail and using it as such, and then it became more of a problem for them to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I think for every outdoor area I've seen, there's trash receptacles everywhere. And I just thought that that was a little bit vague and ambiguous, and, you know, I don't think the Joneses need to be told where to put their trash cans.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
I think that there were 9 recommendations that were made, and I think what we heard at the public hearing was that several of them have already been addressed by the Joneses.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Submit the conditions.
other comments?
Yes, I'd like to comment, and this won't be the first time that I've been invited to a party and I'm the party pooper. Actually, I'm very enthusiastic about this idea of having a Lewis Brewery located on Savannah Road. My concern is focused on the more recent idea that the applicant has suggested as part of their business plan, which will bring food trucks to this property. I enjoy food. I like food with beer, so that's not my issue here. My issue is that in order for a food truck, well, I have an issue about the frequency that a food truck would be brought to the property and its impact on the very restricted parking that is available on the site for customers. In our code, we're required, the applicant is required to set aside so many spaces for employees, and that has been satisfied. But for customers, if in fact a food truck is on the site, it's going to take up, I would estimate, at least 1 space, possibly multiple spaces for people to queue up and buy food from the food truck, and that will be impactful. And the frequency with which a food truck would be brought to the site is different than the plan that we were originally told was in the books or on the books or part of the application when we first took this under consideration. So I have reservations about the use of food trucks being brought onto the site and its impact on the overall, the site as well as the immediate area.
I think they've presented a tremendous plan. I mean, looking at the design of how the building is going to be is going to be a pretty beautiful thing to see coming into Lewis, so I really like that. As far as food, I'm a foodie, so I'm not going to knock a truck for not being there. I really think that they've gone out of their way in every way to show us that it's going to be a big asset for us.
Can we even really consider the fact that the food truck is not really part of the site plan as such, is it? It's really part of the business plan.
It's not, and there's no restriction on any commercial use having a food truck. Typically, we wouldn't allow them to be located in a parking space. They'd have to find a different location than a parking space, so there aren't any, they don't lose parking.
Okay.
So there's.
So could you walk us through
So how
when
would
that
that work?
happens, when someone comes in and says, hey, I'd like to have a food truck for this event? Like, what's the process then that they go through the city? Do you go in on site and see where they're going to put it?
I don't typically. I know sometimes they come in, get a business license. We did have one that wanted to set up on a permanent location, and they were gonna have to go through like an administrative plan to make sure it met all the requirements. But typically, sometimes if you just, wanna show up for lunch on a work site, or they go somewhere else and show up for, I believe when they mentioned it, they were thinking like special events, and maybe on Saturdays, they were thinking of having the food truck show up. I don't believe it was an everyday event. So they were thinking of that, and then typically the food truck, which just needs to make sure it has a City of Lewis business license.
So the food trucks have a business license, they don't need to necessarily get a permit each time that they're coming? Is that once they have,
Yeah,
once
we
the truck
don't
has a business
typically,
license?
as long as they have their City of Lewis business license, they are licensed for that time frame that the license is good for.
And it's not
Janelle,
necessary-
looking at this, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
you go ahead.
It's not necessary, they're not gonna be there every day.
Correct.
Okay.
And nothing in
Well-
code prohibits other properties that are zoned general commercial to have food trucks. So if, somebody else down the street had a general commercial property, they could have a food truck, as long as they had the proper business licenses.
And once the business license is granted, though, there is no regulation that restricts the number of times that permit is used, correct? Or the truck is brought on the site. Is that correct?
Correct. It's
Okay.
just for the time frame, the business license, I believe it's for a year.
Right,
The license is valid set for, so if they
Right.
show up twice in a year,
right.
they've paid for their proper business license. If
Right.
they show up
7 days a
every
week.
day at a
Yeah.
different location
Or
that's
7
properly
days.
zoned, that's perfectly fine as well.
Or even, show up every day on the same site, correct?
That they could do
They
as well.
could do that too. Janelle, you're familiar with the site plan,
Correct.
and I know you're not a fire marshal, as far as I know. That's not part of your job description or your qualifications. But when you look at the site plan and you anticipate a food truck being brought onto the site, where do you anticipate that a food truck would fit on this site?
So depending on the size of the food truck, if it's just kind of like a standard truck, it could probably fit in front of the 540 square foot one-story storage building on the east side of the property, behind the loading space and in front of the two parking spaces on the east side. That's probably the best location for that to be placed. And I think that would be out of the fire lane for that property. And again, if it's only there for a couple hours, the fire marshal will have to, I think they did approve this site plan.
But did the fire marshal approve? Was the
They are
fire
not gonna-
marshal brought?
They do not review nor approve placement of food trucks.
Right.
So there-
Because again, it's a temporary, they come and they go type thing. But if that's where they place it, is in front of that 540 square foot building, it would be out of the fire lane.
And that's the easternmost building you're speaking of?
Correct.
Towards
It's the
the-
one
towards-
closest to Savannah Road.
Single-story building right
It's
there.
the smaller one.
The one that
Yeah.
exists now.
But aren't we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit in that? I think Andrew made a great point. This is not part of the site plan.
Correct, it's not.
potentially part of their business plan, and that's not really relevant
And that.
to what we're doing here.
You're absolutely correct, and I think even if, whatever they did with the food truck, it would have to be not taking up a parking space on their property, and it couldn't be parked on a city street,
Correct.
so.
Exactly.
All right, well, we have that clarification then.
And it can't block the fire lane. So
And it can't fo-
as long as they can accommodate it with that, there's no
No restriction.
restriction.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think we've had it. Okay, again, this process has been a lengthy one. As I mentioned, first the property had to be annexed, utilities needed to be, a plan for extending the utilities had to be worked out. And I think we've been talking about this for nearly a year, since it first came to our attention that the Joneses were anticipating the purchase of the property. So is there a motion regarding this site plan?
You want to make the motion since you know the removal of the, what is it?
Condition number 6.
Yeah, let me hope I get this right.
Just read it.
I move that we approve this application as is, however, deleting one of the JSDRC recommendations of number 6.
Okay.
Regarding the trash can,
Trash.
because then it's gonna get renumbered, so.
Okay.
And just for clarity, so you are approving it with the other conditions that were recommended?
Yes.
Okay.
And so the only receptacles being eliminated would be the ones by the trail itself?
Of course.
Okay. Okay,
No, I mean, I would like them to have trash cans here, yeah.
yeah,
There's one shown on the plan.
right.
So would the Board of Health.
All right, I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just before you vote, Mayor, if you do a roll call, it is a site plan approval. Remember, give reasons. You can rely upon consistency with the comp plan, consistency with the city code. You can rely upon each other's reasonings, but I'd like a good record as to why you're approving or not approving.
I'll vote aye, and I'm approving, as the mayor mentioned, this has been a very lengthy process. The applicants have cooperated with the city at every step of the way. It's, as far as I can tell, it has not been contentious, other than deleting one condition here that was suggested. I do think, as I previously mentioned, that this is compatible with Lewis. It's compatible with the comprehensive plan of 2015. They have complied with all the required jurisdictions and agencies in terms of permitting and others. And I view this as a good addition to Lewis's business as well as Lewis's culture.
I vote to approve this site for many of the reasons that Khalil stated. I also just like to add that I appreciate the aspect of rehabilitating properties in Lewis, particularly for commercial or industrial use. So I applaud that, and I appreciate that. So I vote to approve this project.
I will vote to approve this project as well. I want to commend the owners and their design team for what I think is a really nice repurpose of the concrete block building, and look forward to seeing what plans are developed for the adjacent buildings as well. I also like the idea that it will bring a level of energy to the entranceway, a gateway to Lewis, which I think will be a positive change. So I'm enthusiastic, and I vote yes.
Carolyn?
I too vote yes on this project. I think it's an asset to the city, and I look forward to it. And
Great.
I also second everything everyone else has said.
And I will echo what has been said at the table. One suggestion I would add is, for the Joneses to think about, and that is, since it is a repurposing of a building, it might be interesting to somewhere in the building work in the statement as to how the building was originally used, because it did have a historical commercial use, and I find that as we repurpose buildings, it's a good idea, since we're so interested in our history, that we tell that story, because it will get lost over time. This is a great repurposing of an existing building, which many people looked at and said the only thing they could do was tear it down. So I commend them for their thought of repurposing it, and think it would be a good idea to let the public or anyone who's visiting know what its purpose was initially. So I vote yes.
And we like IPAs.
Is that a motion?
Well, we like IPAs, we like stouts, we like porters. There's other things we like too, Andrew.
Some of us like Belgians, just saying.
Sours, gozas.
I think you've identified the entire city council is going to be your customer, so let's move on to item H4. So presentation and discussion about possible action regarding a site plan for Fancy Pants Holding LLC SP 3-21 to allow the construction of a mixed-use building with associated site improvements to be located at 820 Kings Highway, Zone General Commercial, Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.15-58.00. Here again, this is a commercial site that is just on Kings Highway, just after the, just before the split into where Freeman and Kings split. And this went through a joint site review. There were 8 conditions recommended by the Joint Site Review Committee. And I think here, again, when we had a public hearing on this, many of these conditions had already been met. Janelle, would you care to comment further?
Again, they had actually revised the plan to provide the lighting, the windows in the back of the property. They were providing a screening for the trash enclosures under the stairs. They had provided a cover for the access to the second floor. Again, this is a mixed-use building for commercial use on the first floor and 2 apartments on the second floor. They did separate the parking spaces for the residential in the back and the commercial in the front. And again, it was with the 8 recommendations, proposed conditions from the Joint Site Development Ad Hoc Review Committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. I would note that we've had a concern expressed regarding the pending redevelopment of Kings Highway and the widening of Kings Highway and the sidewalk. And the applicant in this case has obtained a permit from DelDOT omitting the requirement for a sidewalk, which seems to be at odds with some of the other requirements that have been going on in that corridor. However, the applicant is well aware that there is this plan to make improvements to Kings Highway, and they, should they choose to proceed with this, they will be needing to deal with DelDOT as the plan for whatever's going to, however Kings Highway is going to be reshaped, develops.
Yes, that's actually condition number 1.
Exactly.
Be aware the sidewalk is coming and coordinate with DelDOT.
Exactly. Right. But we've had quite a bit of concern in email, so I want to assure everyone that when we had the public hearing, there weren't many people here, that concern was addressed at the public hearing. So, comments from the table?
Yeah, I think this is, it's nice to see this project finally come to fruition. Maureen Eschbach had Aquamarine, her store on Second Street for many, many years, and has and still does have a following of customers in this area and visitors otherwise. And moving out to Kings Highway, it was a very interesting move. And I think she and her family have put together a very, reasonable and compliant plan in terms of mixed use. I mean, I particularly think it's unusual, and it didn't get a lot of attention during the public hearing, but they're gonna have two apartments on top. And I think anytime a community like ours can produce more affordable rental housing or just any kind of small apartments, I think that's a big plus. So I find that, again, this was another project that went through a lot of machinations and a lot of, back and forth, but the applicant's design team has done a really, really good job in taking what's really a small piece of property and really turning it into something that's gonna, hopefully be a nice destination for a lot of people looking, looking for shopping and others, because that whole area there, whether the Brush Factory, Big Oyster, and others, is really starting to develop into its own little section of town. And I think this is just another nice addition to what's happening in that section of town.
Thank you, Khalil. Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, again, I agree with most of what Khalil said, particularly as it relates to the inclusion of the mixed use in the apartments and the idea that people can have efficient places to live. I do, in point one, encouraging anticipation of a sidewalk. I think Mr. Davis spoke about this at the public hearing, and as a town, we should heed his call and encourage the expansion of sidewalks in Lewis. It's, we encourage people to get around by bike and foot, and as best we can to accommodate that, we should. As a community, but I agree with Cleo. It was a good use of the space. I thought they were wise to plan around this this area of the survey that was what do they call it? I guess it was an area that's not. There's no ownership distinguished between there, so they were wise to play within the footprint that they knew for sure was theirs, and including all the setbacks. So it seems like a very good project.
Tim, do you have a comment?
No, I think this is a very, it's a pleasant project. It's well-designed, and I'm looking forward to seeing it executed. Good job.
Ditto, yes. I agree too, for those same reasons.
Okay. I would just go back to Andrew's comment about sidewalks. We are very interested in connecting. As you know, we've connected sidewalks out to Beach Plum. And we are aware that the OA Advantage program that is being built on the former Warrington property or the BB land is required to have a sidewalk. It seemed a bit unusual that there was not a sidewalk laid out into this, but I think the fact that the Joint Committee on Development of Kings Highway has just begun to meet, there will be plans for how the sidewalk will be connected. I do know that DELDOT is planning to connect out at least to the high school and beyond, the sidewalk will not be overlooked.
May I speak to that again, please?
Sure.
I apologize, I didn't do a good job about this. I actually serve for the council on the byways committee. I represent the council to the byways. And byways has been a very strong advocate for all forms of transportation, including multimodal paths, sidewalks, et cetera. This plan is the reason why the sidewalk is not part of the requirement of this development at this point in time is simply because of, as the mayor spoke to, DELDOT is in a design phase for the byway that is going to become Kings Highway, and the details it's still in flux. It's in design, and once that is completed and approved, we can expect that sidewalks will be installed in this area of Kings Highway. It's not going to be an option, it's going to be done.
I notice property owners are here from across the street, and I would imagine you're expecting sidewalks too in front of you at some point. Possibly, I don't know. The development plan is still in development.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion regarding the Fancy Pants application here?
I move that, yes, I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move that we approve the plan, the Fancy Pants Holding LLC plan to make the improvements, site improvements to 820 Kings Highway.
Is there a second?
Is the motion with the conditions
With
offered by the joint
I-
site development?
With the conditions.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, with the conditions as stated, thank you. I apologize. Yep.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Yeah.
Thank you, Khalil. Okay, here again, we need to do a roll call vote. Carolyn, you want to start this one?
I think they've done everything we've asked them to do. I have no objections to any of this.
Okay.
I would vote yes on this.
Tim?
Yes, I will vote to approve this. I think it's a very attractive redevelopment plan for this site. And again, it's on a gateway to the city, and it will be a nice improvement to that area, Kings Highway.
Andrew?
Yeah, agreed. With what others have said before me, it meets the comp plan in terms of finding new affordable housing in my mind, and also improving commercial aspects of Lewis. So, well done.
Yeah, I will also vote to approve. I think it's a well-vetted project that is going to be a nice asset to Lewis, and particularly, as Andrew and we've all mentioned, the two apartments on top, I think, add a lot in terms of housing, or housing stock here, rental housing stock, I should say. And overall, I think, again, that area of town, I think it's exciting what's going on, and I think this is just going to add more to that thriving part of town.
And I too will vote in favor of this project, recognizing this project does add to the full development of that commercial core as we approach. I do think it's important to recognize the impact that the byway will have here, and this will be a good addition to the byway. Okay. So the motion carries. Moving then on to item H5, which is presentation and possible action regarding a possible amendment to an ordinance to amend Article 2, Administrative Procedures, Article 5, Dimensional Regulations, Article 7 of Street Parking and Loading, Article 12, Administrative Reviews, Variances and Special Exceptions, Article 13, Conditional Uses, Article 14, Developmental Plans, Certificates and Permits of Chapter 197, Zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewis, Delaware by amending 19720, the Historic Preservation Commission, Section 19721, Commercial Architectural Review Commission, Section 19722, Building Official Section, Section 19755, Building Heights Section, Section 197-61, Off-Street Parking, Section 197-62, Off-Street Loading, Section 19791, Administrative Review, Appeal of Administrative Decisions and Determinations, Section 19795, Application and Review Process, Section 197-101, Zoning Compliance Report, Section 197-102, Temporary Use Permit, and amend Article 6, Access to City Street and Alleys of Chapter 167, Streets and Sidewalks of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewis, Delaware, by amending Section 197-16, Design Standards. I would note that the discussion here tonight, when this was introduced back on September the 16th, this had a pending ordinance clause in it, and this we are here to discuss whether or not to continue with that pending ordinance clause tonight. We will not be taking public comment tonight on the ordinance itself, as the ordinance will be discussed during a public hearing, which is scheduled for October the 26th in this room. So the discussion tonight is really surrounding the possible suspension of the pending ordinance.
So can I just to draw your attention to the language, it's Section 12 of the ordinance, it's lines 279 through 283. It says this ordinance is subject to the pending ordinance doctrine upon its introduction at the September 16th, 2021 Mayor and City Council meeting. The city shall thereafter reject any new application that is inconsistent with the amendments to Chapter 197 provided in the ordinance until such time as the mayor and city council take action on the ordinance to either approve or reject the ordinance with or without amendments. So that language was in the ordinance as introduced, and that's the topic for this evening.
There has been considerable interest in this ordinance. Obviously, it's quite broad, and I suspect that many people will want to come to our public hearing regarding the body of the ordinance. But we also have had considerable concern about this pending ordinance clause, and that is the topic for consideration tonight, whether we wish to uphold it or whether we wish to suspend it. Okay.
I'll make a motion to remove the pending ordinance doctrine from this draft. It was sort of introduced in a hasty fashion. It hasn't gone to even get comments from the planning commission. We were meant to schedule a public hearing on it before it even gone to planning commission. So there's already folks who had started the process of making improvements to their homes, and people in R3, before they can even submit plans, they have to level the house to the ground. So it seems a bit onerous to have people waiting until there's some kind of decision made on this this ordinance that's yet to go before the planning commission or yet to go before a public hearing at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's been,
Let's get a second first, Mayor. There's a motion now, so see if we can get a second.
I'll say,
I figured he was going to.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's been, as the mayor said, considerable interest in this, and it has generated a lot of comments and a lot of concerns. And when I first heard about it, I also was concerned. And fundamentally, my concern has been that we have applicants out there who have been operating with their property in good faith and have engaged architects, engaged demolition companies, have done a lot of different things in furtherance of improving their property, and then they were quite shocked to learn that their application would not be considered until the pending ordinances were resolved, which of course could be 2 months, could be 6 months, or could never even become law. So I think that generated a lot of concern. I'm concerned as well. I received a lot of phone calls, and it does seem to me that I described a lot of people moving the goalposts or changing the rules in the middle of the game. People, when they apply for a permit, especially those who are doing it based on the current regulations and the current ordinances, should have an expectation that that application is going to be considered based on that current law. And I understand the concept. Tim Ritzer and I have had some very spirited conversations about this, and that were very healthy ones. I mean, really good. I mean, we have different views about some of these things. However, I do believe that there is actually I referred to cost during the voter fire suppression debate. And there's some real costs here for a lot of people who have engaged architects, demolished their homes, hired a builder, and all in doing this in good faith in trying to build a home that they believe is compliant with the law. And then suddenly they learn that that's put on hold because of a pending ordinance that potentially would significantly and materially alter their plans to build their home. So I think I'm glad we're considering this, and I'm, I certainly, wholeheartedly endorse this motion to basically, delete the pending ordinance language so that the city can continue to accept and process building applications that are compliant with the code that's currently in place.
Thank you, Cleo. Carolyn or Tim?
Why don't you go?
Well, I've done a lot of homework on this, and I've also received quite a few emails. I approached this by trying to understand it and what it meant when they kept talking about vested rights. And my understanding on vested rights is that it's an individual who has proactively taken action on improving their property and has done so according to the existing codes. And in my opinion, depending on the ordinance, doctrine is unfair. If you have been operating under the existing code, it is not right for us to put that in front of you before we do our homework. So I would definitely be in favor, vote against.
Well, we're not taking a vote yet, we're doing comment, but,
That was
okay,
just my comment.
thank you. Tim?
All right, I'm going to make a comment and offer an explanation for why I believe that the pending ordinance is in fact relevant. And the position that I'm taking is based upon my commitment to open government and transparency. And I am stumbling with, and I've had this discussion with Khalil, where I can't get my hands around how we are going to accomplish any change in an important ordinance without invoking the pending ordinance. There's going to have to be a date on which it becomes effective, that the ordinance becomes effective, and that it renders what is currently on the books no longer applicable. And it seems to me that the pending ordinance is the only tool that I've been able to find that is in our toolkit to signal to the community that we are considering a change to an ordinance. I don't know any other way of doing this. Perhaps council can, our solicitor can make a suggestion, but I have not been able to figure out another way for us to address the needs that we have identified in this ordinance and change an ordinance in the public eye and bring you all along in this process. So that's the root of my concern. Thank you.
I have concerns about the pending ordinance relating to the fact that an applicant who is going to demolish a home at this point can't even have their site plan, their proposed plans reviewed until the home is removed. I think that creates an expectation that once they get it removed, that their plan will move forward. I think that what this has pointed out to us has been called to our attention by several builders in the area is that in the H-Park requirements, you have to submit a plan before you can tear down something. And in the rest of the city, you can't even submit a plan until you've taken the property down. So I think it creates an unusual dichotomy that really is unfair. So we, Glenn, would you like to comment at all?
No, I mean, well, yeah, I guess I will. I mean, the pending ordinance doctrine, I think it has its place certainly in the promulgation of legislation in certain instances. I mean, when there's clearly something that's gone wrong within the community, given the codes that are on the books, I mean, it could be a change in legislation at the state level that causes something at the local level to get really out of whack. It sort of makes sense to include a pending ordinance doctrine to kind of immediately put a stop to those activities. In other instances, maybe this is one of them, where that sort of those sets of circumstances don't exist. Maybe it makes more sense not to have the pending ordinance doctrine in play. But I think that there's times when it's useful. And I guess as a council, you know, we generally, when we draft the ordinances in a zoning change, we automatically insert the pending ordinance doctrine language. Perhaps we should do a little bit better of considering, you know, the circumstances given the ordinance that we're going to bring before you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, I guess my question is, was the motion I made sufficient?
Yeah, I think, so the motion generally, as I understood it, was to delete section 12 from this ordinance, which would be all the language that relates to the pending ordinance doctrine. So without that language in here, and I think it's clear on the record that you don't want some common law principle to apply making the pending ordinance doctrine.
What does that mean, please?
Well, sometimes you don't have to actually, sometimes you don't have to actually have to put it into an ordinance, certain provisions, and there could be common law out there that says whether it's in there or not, this principle is applicable. Here, we're saying, we're removing the language from the ordinance, we don't want some common law thing to reinsert the pending ordinance doctrine. So this, basically, you are invalidating any pending ordinance doctrine as applicable to this ordinance.
And that pending ordinance, if we were to act on this motion and approve it, and eliminate pending ordinance, we are not addressing the components of the ordinance itself, is that correct?
That is correct. This ordinance is gonna go before a public hearing. The only thing that we're doing here is removing section 12. Everything else is still in play and will be subject to a public hearing.
Okay, and if we in fact find that we need to come back to pending ordinance, that would be an option available to us?
Yes.
Okay. And there is no standard for when you can invoke that and when it doesn't qualify?
No, I mean, there's an interesting interplay between vested rights, as Councilperson Jones mentioned, and the pending ordinance doctrine. I mean, the way it kind of works is that vested rights is good faith reliance on existing standards. So how much effort have you put into your project in reliance upon the standards that are on the books? So you start putting time and money and time and money and time and money into your project. And here comes the pending ordinance doctrine, right? It's coming in. And at some point, you've put so much in that vested rights are going to overcome the pending ordinance doctrine, and you'll be able to proceed based upon the existing standards. But if the pending ordinance doctrine comes in before you've reached that threshold of time and energy into your project, then the pending ordinance doctrine applies.
And that's the part that I'm having trouble with right now. I understand the people who are in queue, and I understand how they've been impacted by this proposed ordinance. But those folks who are not in queue, if we suspend pending ordinance, then they in fact, they receive the benefit of a suspended pending ordinance, correct?
I don't think anyone's gonna go level their house just to,
I'm not suggesting that.
to be part of this.
I understand that, but we really don't know, we don't know what anyone is planning to do. Right? That's how we ended up caught up in this situation to begin with.
Right.
The amount of time it takes to get house plans drafted, this is currently on schedule for public hearing. Well, it'll go to Planning Commission next week on the 20th, public hearing on the 26th, and then it'll be on the November 8th agenda.
Right.
If somebody's not well underway in a house design right now, the likelihood of them being able to apply before November 8th is infinitesimal. I can't even say the word right, but.
So I guess what you're reminding us is that we are in effect suspending for about a 3-week period. Is that what you're suggesting?
Not necessarily.
Well, it depends on, it depends on how you act on the ordinance.
I understand that. If we, in the schedule that you just laid out with the hearing, so forth, then it's possible that by, I think you said November 8th?
November 8th,
All right,
this would be on the schedule for action on the ordinance.
and that could, on the 8th, if it was taken up and approved, then, it could be effective immediately, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right, so there would be no notice at that point
Oh,
in time.
I think there's notice at this point. I mean, I think,
No, what I'm saying is that there would not be any requirement of, we're saying, oh, a year from now, we're going to implement this stuff.
Unless we chose to do that. I mean, if we said it wasn't going to take effect for 60 days, that would be a different
Right.
story.
right, you can
But
set whatever effective date you want
Right.
when you adopt an ordinance. Typically, in the absence of setting an effective date, it's
The day of.
effective upon
Correct.
adoption.
Yeah. I think that no one could claim that they were not aware of this being something out there that we're considering as a result of the fact that it's been published and we see the turnout we have here tonight. So.
I have a question, Glenn, in terms of vested right. I understand it. I understand what it means. People are working on things. Things are happening. But what if you're someone who bought a house and it's just sitting? Are they under this vested right? How
If
does
you-
that
if
work
you
for
purchase a
someone
house
who
and
hasn't done anything?
Yeah, generally they would not be. There's
Okay,
a,
I didn't
yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
All right, just want to make sure.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion. You want to read the motion back, Kayla, so that, can you do that? so that everybody's aware.
Oh, you don't have a mic.
Oh, sorry about that. We'll get you a mic.
So currently, the motion I stand that Andrew made was to remove the pending ordinance due to the current plans being on hold, to the building permits being on hold due to this ordinance.
So,
Basically.
I would just say, I move,
So,
Do you want to revise the motion just
Yeah.
to?
To-
for
to
clarity?
maybe-
That's why I
remove
wanted to make-
section 12.
Yeah,
Yeah,
remove
remove the-
section 12.
lines 279 to
279
283.
through 283.
Yeah.
good team effort there. Are we there now? Oh, okay. I move to remove section 12 of the pending ordinance doctrine. I think that's it, right?
Section 12.
If
lines-
section 12 is gone and this record is clear,
Yeah.
I think that
Okay,
does.
we have a motion, and Khalil, I believe, seconded it. All
I
those,
second, definitely.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Okay, so
Can I ask a question regarding, does this mean, since we've now voted on this and we have suspended this, when does this become effective?
Well, those things that are in the queue can be reviewed under the current, so I'm aware of at least one, but there might be two.
I know of at least one.
Okay, there might be two. I think there might be two that have been submitted that do not comply with the proposed ordinance. So our building, and I think for the most part, at least one's been reviewed, so we should be able to release the permit.
okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, then moving on to item 1, it's presentation of possible action on a resolution to schedule a public hearing regarding the ordinance to amend Article 9 of Chapter 197, zoning of the municipal code of the city of Lewis, Delaware, Section 19773, relating to floodplain regulations. And we are needing to schedule a public hearing on that or have a discussion about how we'd like to proceed.
I'd like to put this on hold, given the fact that we have this resiliency committee that's looking into this. It doesn't make sense for us to get into this right now.
Okay?
Yeah, that was a question I had. Was there a reason this came forward before they're done deliberating?
So this actually started over a year ago. The council adopted an ordinance regarding fill in the floodplain. We got comments back from FEMA saying that some of the wording was not consistent with their wording. And then the floodplain subcommittee went forward and made some additional changes, suggestions for changes. So they had Planning Commission actually held a public hearing and made a recommendation back in January. And then we were waiting on some additional comments back from DEMA, or DENREC, and they did provide comments. It just took some time, and that's why it's moving forward now. But this has actually been in the work for a while.
Been in the work for nearly a year.
Yes.
And have DENREC's comments?
Yes,
what
they
we
were
have in front of
adopted
us-
into the revisions.
They've been incorporated.
It went back to Planning Commission. They were comfortable with the changes that came from DENREC, and then made the recommendation that it move forward to council again.
Thank you.
I also think there's been some ambiguity whether this pertains only to major subdivisions, or is this something that pertains to residential communities, residential properties as well?
So some of the language does apply to everybody, as it always has. A lot of the changes were to the purpose statements, so those are just the purpose statements that were amended. Some of the other items, I know there were some questions about sewer connections and water connections. Those already currently impact individuals, so they would still continue to impact individuals. A lot of the changes were made to add some strengthening to the major subdivision section. And again, the big change was to clean up the language for the fill in the floodplain section that was inconsistent with DEMA and FEMA verbiage.
And I guess I had a similar feel as Caroline. I think, and while we're still, it sort of devalues in some ways some of the recommendations that might come out of that committee. We might find ourselves refining this again. The other question I had is around the standard for preventing something. That's a pretty strong standard to hold to prevent flooding, to prevent the impact of development. I mean, would there be definitions to how someone achieves the prevention of that?
What page are you on?
He's on page 2,
Line
line 70, 71.
Anywhere where it says prevent.
Well,
there are 50.
it's all under A, general provisions.
you.
There's a
So
lot
those
of
are-
prevents in there.
That's the purpose statement. So that's really the purpose statement. The subcommittee wanted to strengthen the purpose statement
Yeah.
of the ordinance. Again, that is something, if you wanted to move forward, you could have a public hearing and make that recommendation to accept or not, or if you wanted to just, put this on hold, well, the resiliency, that is also up to you.
Yeah, the Resiliency Committee is not expected to report until January at the earliest, so,
I just don't see us getting into this.
okay?
I really don't.
I'd just like to make a comment that the edits that I have noted here are a vast improvement over the way the document was first made available. It's much improved. Yeah.
Okay. What is the pleasure? Do you want to defer action on this until you hear more from the Resiliency Committee, or would you like to go ahead and schedule a public hearing? We've heard from Carolyn.
I mean, I'll join Carolyn, and I think Andrew, I heard you
kinda
mention,
right.
I would prefer to defer this
Yeah.
to the Resiliency Committee, has had an opportunity to, digest everything and report its findings or next steps. I mean, we already have source water and a sea level rise ordinance and others that have been considered this year, and this should just be part of the package of work that's come from Janelle and the Planning Commission and others.
Yeah. And since you're a member of the Resiliency Committee, you can help move it along.
Yeah. As are you.
No, I'm an ex officio member. Okay, so we will defer action on this until we have some more word from the Resiliency Committee. I would note that we did defer action on item 2, I2, so we can move on then to item I3, which is presentation possible action on a request for on-street ADA parking spaces on Illinois Avenue and Iowa Avenue.
Oh, right.
This is a request that came forward from 2 residents on the beach regarding, they have state-authorized ADA tags for their vehicles, and yet they have no off-street parking, and they were looking for not a reserved parking space, but a ADA signage in front of their homes. I would note that when we have approved this kind of parking in the past, we have never approved it for an individual person. There's always an ADA compliant space that is open to that person or anyone else who has an ADA tag. So that if the person who is living in that house were to pull out of an ADA space and somebody else pulled into it with a similar tag, there would be no objection there.
Right.
So, and Cleo, I know you've been working on this, so you
Yeah.
want to comment?
Yeah, you described the situation pretty well, Mr. Mayor. These folks do not have driveways, like many homes in Lewis do not have driveways, they have no off-street parking, and it's been quite an inconvenience for these 2 particular residents who, are handicapped. And, whether you're bringing home groceries or you're, parking and having to potentially walk a block or 2 in your condition, I believe it's much needed, and we should be very conscious of all of our citizens and what they need, and sometimes we can accommodate, sometimes we can't. But I think in this situation, I think we're able to accommodate them. I should note that the handicap sign will not be a permanent sign, as the mayor has mentioned. It would not convey with the sale of a home. And also, just to be clear, these signs would only be up during the parking enforcement season, which I believe is May through October 14th.
Correct.
Yeah, and then they would be taken down. Because one of the things that many of us have discussed is the last thing we want in Lewis is to have signage clutter, as they say in the industry. And, we want to be, mindful of that and not detract from the natural beauty of our community. And so those signs would be there just for the parking season.
Great. Thank you. And this would, as you mentioned already, would mirror the parking enforcement season. So there wouldn't be another timeline that would apply. And I think that it's important to note that this would not be limited to the individual homeowner. And so,
Right.
did you have a comment you wanted to make, Tim?
I have a question,
Okay.
Yep.
and the question is for us to consider, please. Would there be, I know there is a beach parking committee that is considering all aspects of beach parking.
Yep.
Is there any reason for us to defer action on this element at this point in time? And, you know, to put this in the beach parking committee?
That's a valid, it's a valid question.
I don't.
I spoke to the mayor about this, and it's a valid question. However, I wanted to consider this evening because I've had multiple conversations with both of these residents.
Okay.
And frankly they have submitted all the documentation we've asked them to submit, so I think there's an expectation on their part that this is gonna be addressed sooner than later.
All right, thank you.
Noting that the parking season ends on Thursday of this week, I would say that this would take effect in the spring of May of next year.
Yeah. And is it May 1st?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
No,
we're not
so-
gonna go out and put
so
them up for 3 days.
No, exactly. And they're well aware of the fact that this is only going to apply during the parking season.
Okay,
Fine.
all right.
All right,
So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for on-street ADA parking spaces on Illinois and Iowa Avenues.
And
And,
not specific to that.
and I was going to continue with, thank you, Carolyn, that it would be, the ADA parking spaces would be marked, that is with signs that would be put in place by the beginning of the parking regulation season in the spring, or whatever that's considered.
May 1st.
May
And run
1st.
for the season, the parking season, ending approximately October 14th. And that these ADA parking spaces will, are not attached to the property. That is, they don't convey with the sale of a home.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to I4 is presentation of possible action on a lease/purchase of a replacement trash truck. Trash trucks are near and dear to our heart. We need them. We have a fleet of, I believe, 5, and one of them's getting rather aged. And Ellen Lorraine, you want to talk to us about this? I know you've been working on some estimates.
Sure. So yes, we do have 5 trucks in our fleet for the city. The 2005 truck has seen better days. It has seen a lot of wear and tear and actually is in need of a lot of repairs in order to bring it to operation. So instead of putting money into a 16-year-old vehicle, we are requesting to purchase, actually lease, a 2021 at a cost of $215,000. That would be similar to what we're doing with other trucks in the fleet, is doing a capital lease for 7 years at about $37,680 per year, and at the end of 7 years, we would pay $1 and own it.
Okay. So at this point, our 2013 truck is just about off lease, is that correct?
Correct, it's close, yes.
Okay. So our 2005 and our 2013 truck will be off lease.
13 is off, we just have 2018 and 2 2019s that are being currently
Okay, fine. All right, is there any discussion regarding this?
You said
Lease.
lease program's the best option?
Yeah.
We went to the lease program, we used to purchase them, I think it's, I don't know, Ellen Lorraine, were you here when we first went to it? I know I was, but that's a long time now. I think it was probably more than 12 years ago when we went from purchasing to leasing.
Yes.
And that's worked out to be a very satisfactory program, helps with cash flow.
It does help with cash flow because we do pay it out of the general capital projects.
Yeah. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the lease purchase of a 2021 New Way King Cobra with a Peterbilt chassis.
It's worth coming to the meeting just to hear you say that, Andrew.
That is the most specific motion we've had all evening.
And you're blushing.
He didn't even stumble with that.
He did, he practiced that one.
Okay, so we have a motion. Does anybody want a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to item I-5, is presentation and possible action on setting a standard public hearing date. I think everyone who may still be on the Zoom call, and those of you who are hanging on here tonight with us, is aware that we have sometimes struggled to find a public hearing date. And what this motion is doing is, or what this action is suggesting, that we standardize a meeting date for public hearings. That would not preclude the possibility of scheduling additional public hearings or finding alternatives. In order to keep things flowing smoothly and recognizing that we normally meet the second Monday of the month, a standardized public hearing would have to be scheduled in the fourth or first week of a month in order to fall, so we could hear it at the next meeting.
Right, and the challenge with the fourth week of the month is there are a handful of times where we wouldn't be able to run the ad 15 days in advance. So Janelle and I would recommend either the first Monday or the first Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
Because that just ensures that we would be able to run the ad. If you make a motion on the second Monday to schedule a public hearing, we need to turn around and run that ad. And when the second Monday falls later in the month, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can't get that done before the fourth week of the month. It's a weird thing.
But given the other obligations we have on Wednesdays and
Right.
Thursdays, those days are not available.
Right, so the first Wednesday of the month is the Sussex County Association of Towns dinner. The first Thursday of the month is the H Park meeting. So if we could do the first Monday or Tuesday of the month as the standing public hearing, then we don't have to, harass you leading up to the meetings to
Okay.
find public hearing dates.
And we would not have a meeting just to have a meeting. It's only if we have to have a
Right.
public hearing.
But as you can tell, we pretty steadily are bringing
Right.
forward things that require
Exactly.
the public hearing, so.
So I know, Khalil, I spoke with you, and you said you preferred Mondays.
I prefer Monday,
Okay.
but certainly flexible, regarding everyone else's
Whatever your
schedule.
schedule is, at this point.
I'm fine with Mondays.
So
Okay, so
And
is there,
these, the meetings would be in the evening, I assume.
they
is that
would,
right?
they would be in the evening, and if there's no business, we don't do it. It's just, it prevents us from having to find a date, scramble.
It's Monday night football. I mean,
Well,
I don't know if
Well,
that's
then all I have to say is make it quick.
Marilyn, we can start early, don't worry.
Yeah,
All
usually public hearings, you start at 6.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion to set the standard public hearing the first Monday of the month?
okay.
I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make the motion. I move that we set a standard public hearing date for the first Monday of the month.
Okay, so there's a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Subject to change, we're going to do it on the first Monday of the month.
Right.
You've made Janelle's day.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts.
First
Okay.
Monday is what we're doing.
So then finally moving to I-6, which is presentation and possible action on on a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission regarding the renaming of Beach 1 and 2. As I believe everyone recognizes, there's been considerable discussion regarding the possible renaming of Beach 1 and 2, and I commend Kay Carnahan for all of her work in
Here.
going through this process. Many people didn't understand where Beach 1 and 2 came from, and I think everybody recognizes that it's better than having a numerical destination. So I commend you for your work. Obviously, in your process, you identified that Beach 2 was primarily the beach that was used by the African-American population, and that there indeed was a facility there known as Johnny Walker's, which was an entertainment facility. And that, I believe, emerged from the African-American Heritage Commission as a recommendation, which was taken before the Parks and Rec Commission and endorsed by them as a way of naming that. I would also note that in that discussion, we have also learned that there was a pavilion that sat on Beach 2, which was an open-air pavilion. And Emory and I have begun discussions with DENREC regarding the possibility of recreating that pavilion on Beach 2. There are very specific restrictions regarding what you can do on the beach side of the dune, and that this has to be worked out with DENREC, but in our initial conversations, DENREC seems very receptive to the idea of us moving ahead with that concept. So the recommendation for Beach 2 is Johnny Walker Beach, as I understand it, and the recommendation for Beach 1, which was discussed at your public hearing, I believe, last week, was you considered 4 different names, and the one that emerged from that was naming it Savannah Beach, recognizing at the end of Savannah Road there is a beach, and it seems very intuitive that it would be called Savannah Beach. So the 2 names that we're considering for approval tonight are Johnny Walker Beach and Savannah Beach. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to add?
I'm just really excited that we've gotten to this point.
Okay, come on up, Ann. Yes,
I'm just excited that we've gotten to this point, and I'm thrilled with the emotional response from it. I thought I was just asking for a name, and I was very amazed at what this has really meant to this community. And it's exciting to be able to see the photos and hear the testimony. And I mean, when I got calls from KYW News Radio wanting to interview people about what their experience was, it just shows how powerful it is, and I'm excited that that's what it's turned into. So hopefully tonight you'll see your way to do this, and then we can move forward so that in the spring, when crowds come back, we've got things set up and people can learn what happened and who's, you know, we're such a resilient community. That's what I think I'd like the story to tell. So.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know you've put an awful lot of time and energy into this, and you and I have spoken several times about all the efforts that you've gone through, and and it has brought out a lot of emotion from the public, and I really do appreciate your work. I know I speak for everyone here at the table. We didn't have a beach commissioner. You volunteered to become the beach commissioner. We added you to the planning commission, or to the Parks and Rec Commission, and you really have taken the job and done a lot with it.
Thanks. I think it's been the perfect job for me. To be
well,
quite
you live
honest,
on the beach in the summertime.
I love it. Yeah, really. So yeah, I probably have more volunteer hours than anybody. So.
Well,
thank you.
We appreciate it. A beach towel count.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about our considering this tonight is as we move to the end of the beach season and we move to the end of the year, all the maps that the chamber puts out and everybody else develops will be reprinted in anticipation of the 22 season. So our taking action on this tonight enables the chamber to move forward with getting those names changed so that when the brochures come out for next year, that they will already have a correction of this. So I would entertain any discussion from the table or a motion to move forward.
Make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay. No one has anything to say.
Okay.
I make a motion that we rename Beach 1 and Beach 2. Do I need specific names? It would be Savannah Beach 1 and Johnny Walker Beach 2.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Kay. Job well done.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have gone through the agenda we have posted for this evening. Thank you all for your patience here this evening. We're only a little over, right at 2 hours.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
And
If we had tried to do it all in one night,
we'd
be here. We'd still be here Thursday.
We'd still be here another 2 hours. So we appreciate your coming out tonight. Again, we will be meeting on Thursday evening in this room or on Zoom at 6:30. And we have some important items on that agenda to discuss and take action on. So anyone who's interested, please check the agenda online, and if you would like to participate, join us then. Thank you very much.
And just 2 points. One, I'm going to repost that agenda tomorrow morning to add I-2, which was deferred.
Okay.
And so that'll be reposted tomorrow. And for those of you, if you want to either give us your notebooks or bring them in tomorrow, we will refill them with the Thursday contents. You don't have your Thursday packets yet.
We've got dribs and drabs of it.
Right.
Okay, so if there's nothing further, how about a motion to
Okay.
adjourn?
I'll make a motion
So moved.
to
All in
adjourn.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll see you all on Thursday. Thank you.
Exactly, right? They came up together, yeah. Marcy's sisters didn't seem to understand. That's okay.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, don't, big Marcy.
How are you, sir?
Yeah.